So he'll, in the process, he'll show you some of the tools that we've used for the emulator and how to use that to test your app. And also want to challenge you to a certain level of polish in the app. I don't want, I've done it before too, so programmer art is something we'd like to avoid. I mean, tonight's fine, but I'd like it if you could, we can look at how we can put a level of polish on these apps in the car because we want them to look good and work good. So, I want to have them kind of express how they've done that. So, there you go, Whirly.
You guys can also, now you guys can also hear me. So, how many of you guys want that Chevy Volt? Yeah, that's why this session got quiet, right? Like the RIM session, everybody was chatting, and then this session, everybody's like, shh, giving away car. All right, so I'm Whirly, I'm Chaotic Moon, I'm one of the co-founders. We do all kind of crazy mobile stuff. Some of you already know us because you've approached us while we're standing outside. And you were a little creepy, I'm not gonna lie. But what we've done is we've taken the GM SDK and made a sample app for you. To kind of demonstrate. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build it. It's going to pop up here in Chrome, and this is the emulator he was talking about. So this is where the apps show up. This is our app. It's called Fuel. The concept was to have an app in the car that helped you find the cheapest fuel along long distance routes, but had a couple of other features, could bring in a couple of other SDKs and APIs and things like that. So basically, I'm going to add a route in, and I'm going to add, let's say, San Diego to Las Vegas, because that's where we're at. So what I've done here is using the SDK, we just pulled up a map. We're going to go from San Diego to Las Vegas. So this is our app, and as you see, the car is in park up there in the upper right-hand corner. So basically, when I run this, it's going to simulate for us, basically running this app as if we were in the car. Now what's great is if you guys were paying attention to Dan's talk earlier, they now have the emulator and they have a couple calls that make it really easy for you to do this. When we first started, for example, there was a call, let me see, what was it, the get info, the get data. And there's also watch data, and we didn't know about watch data, so we built our own simulator, and that took us a lot longer than it'll take you today, because you could use watch data, and then it's fixed. But essentially, what you have is, this is the app that's showing up. If I go here, I can locate the best fuel options. We wanted to add a little extra something to it. So in addition to the best fuel option, our scenario was I'm traveling with my 16-year-old son, and he's a pain in the ass, and I gotta feed him because he's a kid. Legally, I'm responsible. So what we wanted to do is, it also shows us here, we can pull data from Yelp and other sources. There's a McDonald's at this gas station. The gas is 3 cents higher. It's located a mile further away. This one's a couple of miles further. The gas is a little more expensive. There's a Wendy's. So you can take other APIs and put them into this and integrate all this other data into your apps. Now, Dan talked about polish. So, at Chaotic Moon, if you've seen some of our stuff, we try to do pretty simple, really clean stuff for the car and all the automotive stuff. And so when you're making your app, hopefully all of you are going to be making an app using this SDK in just a little bit. You want to just use really clean fonts, things that are nice, big, easy to read. Think about things like driver distraction. Think about things like you're using it in a car and so on and so forth. And when you're testing your app, Dan, they can get the iPad stuff now, right? You're going to talk about tomorrow. Okay, so tomorrow, or Monday rather, they're going to talk about, they have a way of simulating it where you can actually put it on your iPad and take it in your car. So you can actually go test your app in the real world as in a car, which is very useful. So basically, we've got these options here. We've got a couple of other things. For example, whoops. Yeah, I know. I saw that. That's why I really clicked on that. We've got some driving tips. So when we pause, basically, we automatically kick those up when we put the car in park. So let's run that again. And these driving tips are things on how you can basically save gas and drive more efficiently. And the reason is because we wanted to add a social function in there. And so there's a leaderboard. So in my little social network in the app, I've got some fellow Chaotic Moon employees. And in the simulation, Ben McCraw, who's our Chief Creative Officer, is getting better mileage per gallon. Now we thought this could be gamified somehow. There's a lot of different directions you could do with this. So part of what excited us about using API was how fast we were able to get an application built and up and running, and how well we were able to test it in the emulator. We work with a lot of different SDKs, and some of the emulators are really great, and some of the emulators really suck. And the two things about working with this that were great is, one, the emulator is really easy, it works, it comes up to use. Like I said, look for the watch data, because that'll be very useful in building your app as a trick and tip right there. The other thing is, GM was really responsive. So when we work with organizations and they ask us to do this type of work, usually they're like, yeah, you can get all kind of developer access. And then as all of us know, you don't actually get it, right? You send a mail or you send something in and then you hear back a week later or whatever. And they're really, really pushing very hard on this. And Dan and his team have done a great job of setting up, how they're communicating back with developers and integrating the feedback. I think you did 2 revisions to the SDK while we were working with it. Yeah. So it was really, really fast. And we have been working with this thing for like a long time. So they're moving at an incredibly fast pace, which personally for me, I like a lot. So this is a good example app. Again, things to remember when you're building your app is super clean interface. As far as what we used in this app, I made a list of all of the calls if any of you are taking notes. This app basically uses watch position and get position, the get destination and the watch destination, the get data. It should use the watch data, right? And then also the show alert functions. So basically, again, we're just simulating as we're going here. Now, you'll notice the miles remaining and the average miles per gallon fluctuate a lot. And that's because one of the other things you'll notice if you integrate a Google map like this, and this is just a tip to kind of think about, it thinks it knows how fast the speed limits are on all these roads. So as it changes, your data will change, which a lot of times if you're not thinking about that and you're just thinking that you put an average speed and it's not working right, it's pulling that data, then you can troubleshoot stuff that's actually not a problem, it's actually a feature. So this is a really great SDK, it's super clean. The emulator is fantastic because the only thing that I wanted, that I made a request, and they're going to deliver it on Monday, is a way to actually test it in a vehicle is really great. But for the purposes of today and tomorrow, if you have questions, we'll be hanging around a lot. GM is located in the room right next to us, all the way in the back corner.
We got a big sign now.
Yep. They got a big sign. Hang on, he asked if you were publishing stuff. We're going to share this so he can answer that.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Were you asking a question for us or for the guy across the table?
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. It was weird. He asked if we were publishing anything. Don't confuse us, sir. So anyway, so do you guys have any questions or anything about the SDK? How many of you are going to mess with the SDK just because you could win a Chevy Volt? All right, that's not very many of you. How many of you? What? Yeah, exactly. That's what. Yes, thank you. How many of you are lying? Well, your chances apparently are pretty decent because this is there's not 50,000 people at this event. If all of you participated, I think you have a pretty good shot at doing it. Again, Dan already told you what he wants out of the apps, right? He wants a super clean, super functional, good utility-based app. You want to plug that in? Yeah.
So one of the things that we also did for the event, on your USB, we were trying to get some stuff on there, some sample apps on there. I missed the deadline, that's on me. If you go back to one of the AT&T guys, try to find it, or if you come to ours, we've got a couple extra sample apps we put on there that I would really recommend you take a look at. To what Will was talking about, the get data and the vehicle data. In the sample app that comes with the emulator, if you just generate one, it's a little hard to read. So I actually put together this over the holiday, a little simple hello data. Yeah, I guess you should look good. So a very simple thing that will let you learn how to call these calls here. Basically, watch vehicle data will set up a callback that'll call this stuff. You can tell it which data you want, and it'll just fire anytime that data changes. And you can use that to set up a UI of how you put that into. And what I did is just did a really simple HTML and wrote an update data function that basically just using simple HTML DOM calls to just populate that UI. You should use that kind of thing just to figure out how to wire up to data into your app. And when you run that, you're able to get all that information, and then now you can have the data. Now you can look at it and make it pretty. Like I'm just giving you the ability to put a font, but use that in your app and start mashing that together with other data sources you want or other APIs. So as I run my emulator, you should start to see data start to update. It can be that simple with just that one function call. You can start having the vehicle, having it talk to you and tell you stuff that you can put into your app. The other app that we put on there, I had one of the guys in one of our IT groups has been playing around with Google Maps. And so what they did is took the Google Map, and this is actually an old version, is making it so you can show while it's driving, you can actually paint that onto a Google Map screen. Match up, throw some traffic on there, be able to toggle on satellite data. The green line is like a little breadcrumb that you can have, that you can turn on and off. I happen to like it on, but to start looking at other ways you can present that data in context of what you would see. If you could imagine driving down the road, right now buying a navigation system, now you have the ability to customize your own data system, your own navigation system. What we've done is in that sample app that we've given you, if you look for map, all the source code for that key stuff that he did is all right here. I wouldn't say that's my code. It is. So it's using all of the GM JavaScript calls in there. If you go through here, take it. That code's yours. Lawyers, close your ears. I'm not making any kind of endorsement of Google or anything. I'm just saying we just use the regular Google APIs and put in a thing, and you guys can have it because that's what Keith did. So take it, use that. If that gives you an idea of how to start, that's great. If you don't, you don't. So, any other questions?
So only HTML5 apps run on the car.
Right. The SDK for painting into this area here, this uses HTML for the layout of the screen, and using JavaScript to make calls to the SDK or to external. That's our API right now. It's based on that. Any other questions?
Where we get this sample?
If you don't have a disk with it, a USB stick with it, come to the table and we'll get you both of those set up. We either give it to you on a stick or we'll copy it onto yours, whatever. Yes.
So is touch going to be part of the SDK?
Yes. Well, so the SDK, it responds to events, and in certain vehicles will be touch screen enabled. It's kind of a natural thing. We do have some that aren't, but it will respond to touch events. This simulator doesn't have touch. It's using a mouse and keyboard. But one of the reasons why we're creating an iPad version of the simulation environment is to more efficiently have that touch type of feel so that you can more accurately describe what it would be like in the dash once it's in that vehicle.
So it's okay to use the touch?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I would avoid using gestures like swipe and pinch.
Right.
We do have vehicles that will support that, but not as many as the ones that won't.
I installed the last SDK. It's version 2.1, so what's the latest version?
That's the latest version, yeah. What you got is the latest version. Yes. But I'm sorry, what? It does not require it. Some of the data that's being fed through into the SDK comes from various places in the car. So the data can't, some data comes, like for instance, GPS data comes from the GPS unit that's in the OnStar. It may also come from the radio system if it has a navigation system in it as well. But what we're doing with the SDK is we aggregate all the different sensors and sources of data and provide them up. Right now, there's some of it comes from OnStar, but not all that will require. Yes. We don't have an API for that just now. I don't know if it's planned, but there's a lot of data. Instead of getting the code as much as you get the event, there's a tire pressure. Here's the tire pressure, and you can send an alert to say when the tire pressure goes. You know, I don't know how far we're going to go with the engine codes, but that's something we should talk about. Right? Standing in the back.
Yeah, quick question. I got a little thing, so maybe you want to say something. But in other third-party groups, like for example, like the LoJack versus Church for Theft,
Yeah.
is there any way for the streaming data to be utilized or tied into any other existing platform that would help you kind of keep track of that information? If you're so, for say that you knew someone was illegally taken or
Got it. Okay, so so the question is, can I use the data from here to tie it into a service, another service like LoJack or something like that? The answer, yes. There's a lot of questions that we're going to have like that, and you know, as we get to the point where we're releasing this commercially, that we'll have to figure out how to make sure all the right business terms are in play. But the general answer is absolutely yes, and that's actually fundamentally that's where this gets exciting, right? Just showing you a better speedometer, or maybe a worse speedometer in a lot of ways, isn't the point of the SDK. It's to connect it to different parts in people's lives. So.
What about speech? Is separate speech interface, or you can mix or match any? Or?
Yes. So there actually is a speech API in the SDK that got yanked at the last minute. And that was because it wasn't ready, and we want to integrate speech functionality in the vehicle into the SDK. So it's not right there yet. But we don't preclude, you know, if you have a source of doing speech a different way, like doing an off-board speech, like maybe some partners of ours who were at this event have that, that's entirely possible for you to use that. That'd be great.
Excuse me, relating to the carrier, can you use any GSM chip to plug this to the internet, or it has its own connection?
So, for now, this uses the connectivity of the simulation environment.
Of course,
so
in the car?
In the car, there's going to be some things that we'll be talking about as it gets closer into the car. We have some interesting things coming up. Right now, it's using the connectivity you bring. You would tether your phone into the vehicle to provide the connectivity. So there's a lot of stuff that we're working on that we can't talk about right now. And for now, just assume you have connectivity, and that's more of a feature of the radio and how the car works, not necessarily the SDK. The SDK can tell you have connectivity or you don't, but it doesn't, provide that.
Okay, just because we could combine this with the AT&T APIs if AT&T is the provider of the, service.
Sure.
But
yeah,
we don't know yet.
So yeah, connectivity I think is something that is kind of outside the scope of this particular challenge. So, wow.
So I know it's like a web browser, sort of.
Yes.
What about things like transitions and animations and CSS,
Okay.
that kind of stuff? Does it work?
This is an important thing to think about. So this environment is based on HTML and JavaScript. And we've made it look, smell, touch, feel, smell like a regular web browser. In fact, I'd even go as far as to think it's a WebKit type of technology, okay? But don't think of it as a browser. You can't just load pages in arbitrarily. You can't say, hey, just go to Google and be done. You do have to do that. So it has a lot of the characteristics of a browser, but it isn't a browser, I guess. But the question was
CSS3 animations and transitions.
We do have CSS. We're not completely CSS3 compliant yet. We're working on it. We do have CSS support in there, but it's getting there. Today, the browser that's in here, in the simulator, is Chrome. So yes, it has all that, but as we get closer to the vehicle, we'll have to make sure that it matches what the capability of the functionality that's built into the vehicle.
Okay. So animations and transitions.
Animations are awesome, and all this stuff is using CSS right now. And we did have a demo we didn't bring it, but that had some transition and animation stuff. Those are actually they work really well in the vehicle environment that we've seen so far. So
real-time communications in the browser.
Real-time communications is?
Does it have real-time communications?
No, not yet. It does not support RTC yet.
It does not.
It's not. No, it's something we should. any of the questions, like I would really love it if this had feature fill in the blank. I would love to see you at the table, and the three guys that are there are actually, well, Gary's here? Oh, there he is, Gary. So Gary's group is the team that actually architected and built the SDK. All right. So if you go to Gary, especially if you go to Gary with a Red Bull and say, what I really want is RT support, he's going to ask you what that means and start taking notes. And we're going to listen, right? And we want to know what you guys need to make really great apps. And so that's why we're not done. That's not why we're not ready to say, hey, let's just go do all this stuff. We want to hear your input. So,
I'm not sure if I read this right, but you're required for this challenge to have a mobile connection.
For the challenge, you don't have to worry about connectivity because it's on a PC or a Mac. The connectivity is provided for you. You don't have to worry about that. That's going to be provided outside of the scope of the SDK.
You don't really need to.
Don't worry about the connectivity part. Just make this look great, solve a real problem, and have a good polish on it.
It can be all there. You don't have to have a.
You don't have to worry about mobile. Right?
Okay.
Because the SDK provides the sensor data, such as engine temperature,
Yes.
fuel level, something like that. I know that in the mechanical shop, there's a minor code that can be obtained from the engine. So is the SDK going to provide that kind of stuff?
Some of them, yes. But so the question was, the SDK provides a bunch of vehicle data, doesn't provide the engine codes. We talked about that a second ago, but I did want to point out, if you go up to the settings box up here, it exposes the vehicle data that's currently available. So you can say, okay, I'm on a GMC vehicle, and you can go and change it to a different brand, so that anything that needs to be band specific can be that way. But you can go through and change your, where's the buttons available. If you want to change like vehicle data, and you want to simulate that the fuel level is 0, or if you want to like just drag it around and make sure it doesn't animate yet. But the idea is you can set a vehicle data, go into your UI and see it getting back from watch vehicle data and show that you got the data you put into it, that you got it back out. So if you want something that's really based on a particular set of data in there, you can set the value and test for that.
I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, I think we only have one more, and then Gary's going to be loving to hear you over at the other table.
I want to simulate a feature we don't have yet. Is that a bad idea?
Simulating a feature we don't have. I'm okay with it. What kind of, like, without giving away your secret sauce, do you have an example?
It has to do with interacting with the phone.
Sure. Okay, so absolutely, for this case, we're going to provide, GM's going to provide a bunch of the data that's really, the stuff we're going to focus on is stuff only we can do, right? We don't really want you to have to talk to the CAN bus and pull out some archaic piece of information and format it. There's a bunch of stuff that we're not the best source of that. So stuff like phone and stuff like that, we may not be the source of data you want to use. You can use your own. We'll have to figure out, again, once we get to the commercialization of what that means and what the licensing might be, and we'll work that out. But for today, for the hackathon, if you have an idea, especially if it's something you think is really unique and it's going to be your secret sauce, you should absolutely tie it up into something that reads off your PC, off to a web service or something like that, and take advantage of it. Make sure it's something that's relevant. What I want to leave with you is this. This is meant to be running in a car. It's meant to be a thing with wheels and engines and stuff you're driving around. We want it to be safe. But we want it to be relevant. If it's something that you can run an app on your iPhone in the car, it's probably not relevant in a lot of ways. So it's something we want to really, there's a phrase that in our group that we use, it's a trite phrase and it almost doesn't mean anything, but I want to leave you with it. It doesn't mean anything until you know what the secret is. The thing is, we want to expose the carness of the car. If it's something that needs a car there, it's going to be compelling because it's going to be something that makes the car experience better. Either driving, owning, parking, looking at. The carness of the car is what we're looking at here. So in your demo, if you look at it and use that test, if this is this something that I could use on a phone in a car, that I could, you know, and selfishly, if it's something I can work, okay, it's something I can use in any car, but not this one. It's probably not got that carness of a car kind of thing. We want that kind of thing to come out because we want, at the end of the day, GM, we want to make better cars, and we want this to help us with that.
Right, and so as a developer, when we got the SDK, and I sat down with our team, with Tyler and John and everybody, you know, obviously a bunch of ideas came up, right? And those ideas were, you know what, we can take this off the phone and make it show up on the monitor and do this and that. Those were all the wrong ideas, right? We very quickly went through those. What the SDK is good for is a whole new set of apps and a whole new set of opportunities that you haven't had the ability to do before. You can pull how much fuel's in the tank and how fast you're going and repair data. You know, there's all of these different things in the SDK that you can pull. And so we kind of went the way of avoiding the phone and the phone integration completely and just focusing on only what we could do with the SDK in the car. You know, not because GM gave us a car SDK, but as we were using it, it didn't make a lot of sense to say, oh, I can take this thing and do somewhere else and I can put it and kind of like retrofit it into a car. It made a lot more sense to say, with all this data we can collect from the car and the information systems in the car and tying to GPS and everything else, there's a whole new class and a whole new set of applications that we could create. So that's kind of how we approached it.
Okay, I really appreciate all the questions and your support and attention, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with. If you have any questions, come over to our table, and I've got the guys ready to help you out. If you don't have those sample apps, it's probably worthwhile getting them to start with because I think they'll save you some time. So come on by. Thank you.